What are
Yes.
your what's your particular stance on the way we handle undocumented immigrants in this country? Because I'm aware that they aren't U.S. citizens, they don't have constitutional rights, but they are still people, and we should treat them with respect, and they have human dignity. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so let me start from this premise. My view on immigration is almost entirely libertarian if there were no welfare state. So my view on immigration is that free flow of labor is a good thing, but there are two mitigating factors. Mitigating factor number one is you can't come here to take advantage of the welfare systems, and mitigating factor number two is you have to accept the culture of the United States, which is to say the rights that are expressed in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which means a small government not guaranteeing bigger services through redistribution of income. But that we don't have to. People come here to work. We don't have to give them the vote either. I mean, as long as you're coming here and not committing a crime and you just want to work, I don't really see that as being a particularly big problem. As far as people who are undocumented and violating the law to be here, the biggest problem, as I see it, is, again, twofold. One is taking advantage of the welfare system, and there is a net cost for people who are coming here illegally because they take advantage of the education system, for example. They take advantage of state systems. It's still forbidden to get federal welfare, but there are state systems in California where I live. There are tremendous state support systems for undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants. And so here's my view. The government has every right to decide who comes in the country and who doesn't come into the country. That is true for new immigrants. It's true for people who are already here. If you come here and we feel that you're a net benefit to the citizens of the United States, you're coming in here and you are going to work hard and fly right, and you're going to be a great addition to the United States, you respect our view of human nature and of government, and you just want to be part of this great mission, then more power to you, come on in. The same thing holds true for undocumented immigrants. Just because you've been here for 10 years, if you've been relying on welfare, then I think you ought to go. If you are not a net benefit to the United States, you ought to go. A citizenry gets to say who gets to join and who doesn't get to join. And if that means that there's a father and a mother, and the father is a bad addition, but the mother is a good addition, then they're going to have to make a family decision as to where they live, just like we would have to in any other family situation. But it seems weird to me that the government can go through 150 million tax forms every year, but the government doesn't have the power to go through 11 million applications from illegal immigrants, interview people, and decide who's going to add to the country economically and culturally and who's going to detract. So in other words, do it on an individual level. The big problem is that you have people on both sides who don't want to do it on an individual level. They want to say, okay, all illegal, I don't use undocumented because that's a euphemism, all illegal immigrants out. Okay, I think that that's silly. There are people who are illegal immigrants who have been here working hard and doing the right things, but there are lots of people who haven't. And people on the left who say everybody should stay because they've been here and they're just like us. Well, not everybody is just like us, and we should take that into account.
My question was more or less, what is the reason why there's such a disproportionate amount of single mothers in the African-American poverty, like in that realm of...
Because, okay, so the real reason that there's a lot of single motherhood in the black community is because single motherhood has increased tremendously across all communities. So it used to be that in 1960, 5% of white women were single mothers. Today it's 40% of white women. So all across, it's increased. Single motherhood in the black community has been a bigger problem than in the white community because, yes, of pathologies of slavery. That goes all the way back to, back in slave times, the rate of single motherhood was really high because of forcible separation of families, and that carried over into Jim Crow as well, although it was beginning to decline, actually, in the 1950s, in the 1940s and the 1950s. With the explosion of welfare, which was directly targeted at low-income communities, which happened to be disproportionately minority, now there was an actual economic incentive to continue in pathologies of single motherhood. That if you were thinking about getting married before you had the baby, now maybe you didn't think quite as hard about it because, after all, the government was there to pick you up. And so the single motherhood rate continues to rise at a very high rate, but it's rising similarly at a high rate in the white community, too. So I don't want to pretend it's solely a black problem, single motherhood. It isn't. There's a very high single motherhood rate in the black community, high rate in the white community, high rate in the Hispanic community. That's mainly because of the sexual revolution and the ideas from the left that a child doesn't need a mother and a father, and that there's some sort of inherent virtue that attends to being a single mother, which is really an irritating thing. There's a lot more virtue that attends to being a responsible mother, marrying dad, and then there being two parents there to help raise the kid. It's a source of never-ending annoyance to me that the way the popular culture treats disparate situations is that my wife, who's responsible to do that. Also, I'm confused why illegal immigrants would try to shut down Disneyland. It has a wall around it, and you need tickets to enter, and you are thrown out if you illegally trespass. So that seems like a weird place to protest. But we'll get to all of those things. Yesterday, that wasn't the only place that they were protesting, by the way. They apparently blocked an entrance to Disneyland on Monday. Now, we were at Disneyland on Sunday. We had a great time, met some fans, which is always a party. It's kind of fun going to places like Disneyland. You meet a lot of listeners, and hello to all of the people I met at Disneyland. That was always a party. But according to the LA Times, the next day, Monday, DACA recipients stood in a crosswalk at South Harbor Boulevard around 10 a.m. and blocked buses from entering the Anaheim theme park. 15 protesters were quickly removed by law enforcement officers and were relocated to a sidewalk where they held signs and chanted, "No dream, no deal." So it's about 20 people, and Disneyland operated completely normally. I do have a question, as I say. As a regular Disneyland patron and, yes, season ticket holder, I have 2 young children, this is insanely idiotic. What in the hell does the happiest place on earth have to do with people illegally in the country retaining their ability to stay in the country? It ought to be noted that Disneyland has a pretty strict immigration policy. No ticket, no entry. And they have a wall, a giant fence around the entire park. And if you try to climb the wall, they will call the police on you. So Disneyland, unless they were protesting for free entry to Disneyland, which is something I might be able to get behind on occasion, I don't know why they would do this. But it just demonstrates that demonstrators themselves just do things without really any thought, simply to get the press. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer is idiotically trying to blackmail Republicans. I don't think any of this is going anywhere, as I suggested yesterday. I don't think a DACA deal is imminent. I don't think that Mitch McConnell is going to push one. I don't think Trump is going to sign one. I think in all likelihood we hit the March 5th deadline for reinstating deportations, and Trump just says, listen, we're not going to give you papers, but we're also not going to deport most of the Dreamers. And they go back to sort of this in the shadows, in between status. I got some emails yesterday, and they're quite correct, suggesting this is bad for the Dreamers because with their current sort of green card status, they can get jobs. Trump would prevent them from getting jobs. The truth is that illegal immigrants in this country have been working for a very long time, which is how they've been able to stay in the country. And yes, it will revoke certain legal status in terms of work, but it won't actually deport